Soft spring sunlight streamed into the white mansion in Boston's upscale residential area. Elizabeth Hamilton had woken up a little earlier than usual and was preparing breakfast in the kitchen. Despite being 7 months pregnant, she efficiently made toast and fried eggs. The marble counter displayed seasonal berries and organic juice, creating a perfect breakfast table. Her meticulous nature as a luxury jewelry store manager was reflected in her housework. Before marriage, she had worked at a prestigious jewelry brand in New York, but moved to Boston upon marrying Michael. Her abilities were quickly recognized there, and she was soon promoted to manager. "Mom, good morning." Elizabeth smiled gently at the voice of her 8-year-old daughter Emily, who came running down the stairs. With her blonde hair tied back and wearing her school uniform, she looked like a little angel. "Emily, don't run. It's dangerous." "Sorry. But I had such a wonderful dream. I was playing in the park with the baby. The baby held my hand really tight." Emily talked excitedly as she sat at the breakfast table. Her innocent expression warmed Elizabeth's heart. "Hey Mom, is the baby a girl or a boy? You know by now, right?" "We don't know yet. But either way, they'll be precious family. I hope they grow up to be as wonderful as you, Emily." Emily nodded with satisfaction at Elizabeth's response. She spread blueberry jam on her toast with an almost adult-like serious expression. "I'm so excited to become a big sister. I'll read lots of books to the baby. And I'll teach them piano too. My teacher said I've really improved." Just then, footsteps were heard from upstairs, and Michael appeared in a perfectly pressed suit. Maintaining a youthfulness that belied his 35 years, his refined features made him look like an executive from the cover of a business magazine. "Good morning, Elizabeth." "Emily." He sat down at his prepared breakfast spot with a mechanical smile. He took a sip of coffee while reading the Wall Street Journal. "I have an important meeting today, so I'll be late. It's about a new project." "I understand. I made you lunch to take with you. It's a salmon sandwich." Elizabeth handed her husband a paper bag. A perfunctory conversation. Where had their former love gone? In the early days of their marriage, there had been more conversation. On weekends, they would go out for brunch together, visit museums, and talk about their dreams for the future. But now, suddenly, the doorbell rang. My, who could it be so early? When she opened the door, there stood her mother-in-law, Patricia Hamilton. She wore Chanel's latest two-piece suit with perfect makeup. Coming from Boston's elite, she was well known in the community as a philanthropist. "Good morning, Elizabeth. We need to talk." Patricia swept into the house before being invited. The scent of her luxury brand perfume wafted through the entryway. "Elizabeth, I'm going to host a wonderful baby shower next month. I've already made a guest list of about 50 people." "Oh, but that seems like such a burden. And so many people." "It's only natural. It's our family tradition. We've always done this for the second child of the eldest son's wife. I've already arranged the venue and catering. I've reserved a private room at the Ritz-Carlton." Elizabeth maintained her composure despite her complex feelings. She had done so in front of her mother-in-law for the past 7 years. Her own parents were middle class. Patricia seemed determined never to let her forget that fact. "Mom, I'm excited about the party. Can I wear a dress too?" Emily's innocent voice slightly lightened the heavy atmosphere. "Of course, Emily. I'll choose a beautiful dress for you." Patricia showed a rare gentle expression toward her granddaughter. However, anxiety swirled in Elizabeth's heart. Why had her mother-in-law suddenly decided to do this? She hadn't done anything so extravagant for the first child. Did she have some purpose? Michael, oblivious to his wife's feelings, said, "Thanks, Mom," and left for work. As Elizabeth watched her husband's retreating figure get into his luxury car, she felt the baby move. The grand ballroom at the Ritz-Carlton Boston was filled with spring sunlight. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, cherry blossoms in full bloom could be seen in the Boston Public Garden. Inside, pink and blue gradient balloons were elegantly arranged, and arrangements of pure white roses and baby's breath adorned the tables. The chandelier light reflected off the crystal tableware, sparkling like jewels. Elizabeth, wearing a champagne beige maternity dress, greeted guests arriving at the reception. About 50 women from Boston's upper class gathered, dressed in elegant dresses. Among them were 3 other pregnant women. All were daughters of Patricia's acquaintances. Coincidentally, they were all pregnant with their second child, just like Elizabeth. "Elizabeth, lovely dress. Oscar de la Renta, isn't it? Oh, how wonderful that your baby seems to be doing well. My daughter just gave birth to a boy last month. It's so different from our time, with such lovely maternity wear available now. Though few can pull it off as well as you." Elizabeth responded politely to the words of these social butterflies while feeling somewhat uncomfortable. Many of them were Patricia's longtime friends. Women who had grown up in Boston's prestigious families for generations. It was still a world Elizabeth couldn't fully integrate into. Much of the conversation revolved around vacation homes in Martha's Vineyard and European holidays. They casually discussed luxuries unimaginable to Elizabeth's family. "Mom, look. It's so beautiful. Like a castle." Emily came running over. In her light blue tulle dress chosen by Patricia, she looked like a princess straight out of a fairy tale. Around her neck sparkled the Hamilton family's hereditary diamond pendant. Elizabeth's heart warmed at her daughter's innocent smile. "Emily, don't run around like that." "But Mom, look. There's a chocolate fountain over there." "Oh, Emily. A lady shouldn't raise her voice like that." Patricia approached while admonishing her granddaughter. She was displaying perfect hostess behavior today as well. Dressed in Chanel's latest tweed suit, she exuded first lady-like elegance. Beside her was Kate Wilson, the sister of Michael's college friend. "Kate, move that vessel a little to the right." "Yes, perfect. I'm impressed by your sense of style." Kate, known as a white angel nurse, was helping with preparations today as Patricia's right hand. Her meticulous nature was Patricia's favorite. However, there was something cold in the look she occasionally cast toward Elizabeth. "Kate, thank you for your help." When Elizabeth spoke to her, Kate's expression briefly tensed. "It's nothing. I'm always indebted to Patricia." The food being served was truly artistic. Foie gras canapés, truffle-scented quiche, and lobster thermidor for the main course. The dessert cart displayed colorful macarons, éclairs, and fruit tarts. The aroma of crêpe Suzette being finished by the chef before guests' eyes wafted through the venue. My, this catering is wonderful. As expected of the Ritz. Yes, Patricia's parties never disappoint. The charity gala the other day was spectacular too. I heard they raised $2 million. Amidst the praise, the gift-giving time began. The gift table in one corner of the venue was piled high with luxury brand boxes. Elizabeth, open this one. I had it brought in from Chicago. Burberry's latest baby clothes, Hermes blankets, Tiffany baby sets. Sighs of admiration rose from the venue as one luxurious gift after another was opened. Elizabeth maintained her composure as she carefully unwrapped each one. When she saw the hand-knit baby clothes from her parents, her chest tightened. At that time, Patricia began serving a special tea. An antique silver tea set made its way elegantly around the tables. Elizabeth, this is a special herbal tea. It's good for pregnant women. It's a special blend passed down from my grandmother. Made with the finest herbs imported from Europe. The amber liquid was gracefully poured from the silver teapot. The same tea was served to the other pregnant guests. Kate was efficiently serving the tea. Elizabeth took the offered tea. Among the elegant aroma, there was an unfamiliar, medicinal scent. Though she was quite knowledgeable about tea, this scent was new to her. It's a bit bitter, but warm. She felt something off when she took a sip. There was a medicinal bitterness in the aftertaste. But she couldn't mention that in front of her mother-in-law. Elizabeth smiled and set down the cup. At that moment, the atmosphere in the venue began to change subtly. At first, no one noticed. But gradually, the changes became apparent. I feel strange. My head is heavy. I need to use the restroom. The other pregnant women began to change color one after another. Elizabeth's vision also started to blur. She could barely stand. The baby in her womb moved anxiously. Mom. Mom, are you okay? You look pale. Emily's voice seemed to come from far away. Her daughter's worried face appeared hazy. My head is spinning. Emily, I'm sorry. As Elizabeth's consciousness began to fade, Emily's scream echoed through the venue. Mom! Someone help! Mom's going to fall. Help! Patricia rushed over in panic. Kate also began administering first aid as a nurse. However, the other pregnant women were also becoming ill one after another. Women in expensive dresses collapsed onto sofas and carpets. An ambulance. Someone call an ambulance. Call the police too. This isn't an accident. Could it be the tea? The venue was instantly enveloped in panic. Someone called an ambulance, and sirens could be heard approaching. In the midst of this, Elizabeth's consciousness sank completely into darkness. In a private room at Massachusetts General Hospital, Elizabeth's consciousness gradually began to return. The smell of disinfectant and the regular beeping of the heart monitor reached her ears. She tried to grasp the situation while staring at the white ceiling. The 4-needle in her arm hurt slightly. Outside the window, spring twilight was beginning. "Mom! You're awake." Emily threw herself at her mother in an embrace. Traces of tears remained on her daughter's cheeks. Her light blue dress was wrinkled, and the ribbon was half undone. Behind Emily were her parents, who had rushed over from home. Her mother had brought homemade soup, and her father anxiously clutched a newspaper. "Emily. I'm sorry, you must have been scared." "Yes. I was so scared. I cried the whole time in the ambulance. But they said the baby is okay. The doctor told me so. They even let me hear the heartbeat." At those words, Elizabeth instinctively placed her hand on her belly. There, she could still feel the definite movements of the baby. Tears of relief rolled down her cheeks. The monitor displayed the baby's healthy heartbeat. "Elizabeth, thank goodness. We were so worried." Her mother clasped her hand. The warm touch reminded Elizabeth of her childhood. Her father also showed an unusually worried expression. An emotional side he never usually revealed showed on his aged face. Just then, there was a knock on the hospital room door, and 2 detectives entered. One was a veteran detective in his 50s, Thomas O'Connor. The other was a female detective in her 30s, Sarah Chin. Both wore serious expressions. A well-used notepad peeked out from Detective O'Connor's breast pocket. "Mrs. Hamilton, may we speak with you?" "It won't take long." "Yes, please." Her parents took their daughter and left the room. Emily held on to her mother's hand until the very end, finally leaving the room with the promise, "I'll be right back." The detective sat down. Detective Chin took out a recorder. "First, there's something we'd like to tell you," Detective O'Connor began quietly. "The other pregnant women are all safe as well. All 3 are receiving treatment in rooms 1 floor down. So far, there appear to be no effects on the fetuses." Elizabeth let out a deep sigh. Knowing the other pregnant women who had collapsed at the party were safe lightened her heart a little. She recalled how they had all been pregnant with their second child like her, and felt uneasy about this coincidence. "Mrs. Hamilton, could you tell us about what happened at the party in detail? Particularly about when you drank the tea. Even small details would be helpful." Elizabeth slowly began speaking while organizing her memories. The luxurious party, her mother-in-law Patricia's behavior, and the tea incident. As she spoke, she remembered more and more unnatural points. Why had her mother-in-law suddenly thrown such a large party? Why were the other pregnant women also expecting their second children? What symptoms did you experience after drinking the tea? At first I thought it was a bit bitter. It was clearly different from normal tea. But since I was in front of my mother-in-law. After that, my head suddenly felt heavy, my vision blurred, and my body became sluggish. Detective Chin took efficient notes. Her blue ink pen quickly filled the small notebook. Detective O'Connor continued questioning in a gentle tone. "Who prepared the tea? Please tell us in detail." "My mother-in-law did. And Kate Wilson helped too. She's the sister of Michael's college friend. Apparently she's been helping my mother-in-law with housework recently." I believe she works as a nurse at Massachusetts General Hospital. At that moment, Elizabeth's memory became vivid. Kate's expression just before she lost consciousness. Those cold, satisfied eyes. And her somewhat flustered behavior during party preparations. Actually, just as Elizabeth was about to speak, the hospital room door opened again. Michael entered. Unlike his usual perfect appearance, his tie was loosened and his complexion was poor. Sweat beaded on his forehead, and there was a coffee stain on his shirt collar. "Elizabeth, are you all right? Mother called me. I left the board meeting right away. Mr. Hamilton, we actually have something to discuss." Detective O'Connor stood up. His expression held the severity characteristic of someone who had grasped important facts. "Regarding your wife's case, there are several facts we need to confirm. Particularly about your relationship with Kate Wilson." At those words, Michael's expression momentarily froze. Just then, hurried footsteps were heard from the hallway. "Wait. I'll explain. It's all my responsibility." Turning around, there stood Patricia. Unlike her usual dignified appearance, her makeup was smeared and her shoulders trembled. Her Chanel suit was disheveled, and documents peeked out from her handbag. "I didn't know anything. That girl, Kate. I never thought she would do something like this." Patricia's voice shook. Elizabeth had never seen her mother-in-law so distraught. Her usual haughty attitude had vanished, and what remained was just an anxious mother. "Mrs. Hamilton, please calm down. First." Interrupting the detective's words, more footsteps approached. This time, hospital security staff brought in a woman. Kate Wilson in her white coat. In her hands, she clutched an envelope containing evidence. "Kate is the culprit," Patricia cried out. "She put something in my tea, without my knowledge." "That's not true," Kate objected. Her voice carried a tone of determination. Michael told me to. It was all under his instructions." The sudden confession froze the hospital room. Michael's face turned pale. Detective Chin quickly switched on the recorder. "The test results are in," a newly arrived doctor announced. The paper pulled from his white coat pocket contained detailed analysis results. "We detected traces of laxatives in the tea. This is a drug normally only handled in hospitals. Specifically." All eyes focused on Kate the nurse. She dropped her shoulders and spoke with resignation. In her eyes floated the resolve of someone who could no longer turn back. "I'll talk. I'll tell everything. But Michael, you should talk too. About our relationship, about the baby, everything." Elizabeth stared at her husband. Michael tried to say something but no words came out. In his hand, he gripped his mobile phone. The screen displayed messages with Kate. At that moment, the baby moved significantly in her womb, as if responding to the truth about to be revealed. In a small hospital conference room, Kate Wilson sat in the central chair, facing Detectives O'Connor and Chin. Her white coat was wrinkled, and dark circles of fatigue showed under her eyes. On the table lay an envelope containing evidence. Then, once again, please tell us about the circumstances of the incident. Detective Chin pressed the recorder button. I have been in a relationship with Michael for a year now. Kate began speaking in a trembling voice. We met through my brother who knew him from college. At first, we just kept casual contact. Detective O'Connor took notes. Only the sound of his pen echoed in the quiet conference room. But 6 months ago, things changed. I'm pregnant. With Michael's child. At this confession, Detective Chen's expression tightened. He promised to marry me. He said he would divorce Elizabeth. But when her second pregnancy was discovered, his attitude began to change. Kate's voice caught. Tears welled in her eyes. So that's why this plan. Yes, it was Michael's suggestion at first. Actually, the other 3 pregnant women, it was all orchestrated. The air in the conference room froze. Through Patricia's charity connections, we found pregnant women expecting their second child. I checked their health conditions through the hospital database. What about the drugs? I took them from the hospital. Kate pulled out a small drug container from her white coat pocket. This is a type of laxative. In large doses it can be dangerous, but in small amounts, severe symptoms wouldn't. We'll take this as evidence. Detective Chin carefully took the container. At that moment, there was a sound from the hallway. The door opened, and Michael appeared with his lawyer. My client will not make any further statements. Wait. Michael held back his lawyer's arm. That's enough. He collapsed into a chair with an exhausted expression. It's all true. I planned it. Security camera footage was displayed on the screen. Scenes of Kate taking drugs from the hospital storage, meeting secretly with Michael, and the moment Kate mixed the drug into the tea at the party. What was the purpose? Detective O'Connor asked quietly. If Elizabeth and the other pregnant women faced risks of abnormal births, the insurance money would. His words trailed off. Detective Chin continued in an icy voice. Insurance fraud, correct? And involving multiple victims. I believed in a different future. Kate said in a despairing voice. A new life, with Michael. Such a future never existed. Michael muttered. I just used you for my own benefit. At these words, Kate's expression crumbled. Outside the conference room, Elizabeth waited with her parents. Patricia sat in an adjacent chair. Emily had been taken home by her grandparents. Elizabeth, for hurting you. Patricia uttered words of sincere apology for the first time. You didn't know. Elizabeth said quietly. You were also a victim. A nurse approached their conversation. Mrs. Hamilton, we have the test results. She offered a warm smile. The baby is healthy. There's nothing to worry about. Elizabeth let out a deep sigh. Anxiety about the new life ahead and hope for the child to be born mingled in her heart. The conference room door opened, and Michael emerged with his lawyer. He stopped in front of his wife. Elizabeth. But no more words came. Without looking at her husband's face, she lovingly felt her child's movements. Autumn in Boston. Under the trees beginning to change color, Elizabeth pushed a stroller carrying 3-month-old James. Emily waved her small hand beside them, making her brother smile. "Jamie, enjoying your walk? You're with your big sister." The baby returned an innocent smile to Emily's voice. 6 months had passed. The divorce proceedings with Michael were already complete. He had been indicted for drug tampering and attempted insurance fraud, and the trial was still ongoing. Kate Wilson had already received a 5-year prison sentence. Elizabeth. Turning around, there stood Patricia. In her arms, she held a hand-knit blanket. "I knitted this for Jamie. My knitting has gotten quite poor, but..." "Thank you." Elizabeth smiled genuinely. Since the incident, Patricia had changed dramatically. Her haughty attitude disappeared, and she sincerely apologized and worked to repair relationships. "Elizabeth, I'm truly sorry for involving you in that incident. My arrogance put you and the baby in danger. As Michael's mother, I also bear responsibility for not seeing through my son." "That's enough," Elizabeth said quietly. "You were also a victim. And for Jamie, you're an important grandmother." Tears welled in Patricia's eyes. She gently touched her grandson's cheek. "I never saw your strength before. Living forward for your children. It seems I have a lot to learn from you." At the jewelry store, Elizabeth had already been promoted to owner. Her management skills were highly valued, and sales were up 150% year over year. Meanwhile, Michael had been forced to resign from the investment bank after the discovery of his affair and attempted fraud. "Mom, can we play in the park?" Emily asked with shining eyes. "Yes, of course. But don't take your eyes off Jamie. Leave it to me. I'm a proper big sister now." Emily held her brother's hand and spoke to him gently. The bond between siblings grew stronger day by day. Patricia sat on a bench a little distance away, watching over her grandchildren. The autumn sunlight gently illuminated her white hair. "Elizabeth, next Sunday, if you'd like, dinner with the family." "Yes, I'd love to," Elizabeth answered while holding her son. Jamie's small hand touched his mother's cheek. At this gesture, Elizabeth smiled from her heart. True, this might not be the family form she had envisioned. But living in this moment with these children was the most important truth of all. "Hey, Jamie. Our new life is just beginning." Thin clouds drifted in the sky, and maple leaves danced in the wind. In the Boston Public Garden, a new family story was about to begin. That night, Elizabeth wrote in her diary, "To my beloved children. Sometimes life takes unexpected turns. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. Rather, it might be a chance for new doors to open. Our family has changed shape a little. But our bonds have grown much stronger. Emily has become a wonderful big sister, and Jamie grows healthier each day. Patricia has also become true family. Surely various things will happen in the future too. But we can overcome them together. Because this is the path we have chosen. With love. Mom." Outside the window, the full moon shone quietly. Tomorrow, another new page would begin.